Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the initial video in this series on cropping and drought precipitation conditions throughout the U.S. And I hope to make this a weekly episode with the intent of providing information on the status of the crops, the status of drought situations, which the reverse of drought would be wetness. And so if it's wet, it's not droughty. If it's droughty, it's not wet. And so it's a measure of precipitation, and we'll look at a few parameters of that and be able to track through on a weekly basis changes in dryness and greenness of vegetation resulting from whatever the water situation does. And so we've got several products we'll be looking at weekly, tracking through and monitoring essentially the cropping situation in the U.S., which is our food supply. So hopefully this will be important to us as we go through this. And so one of the, I've got a bunch of maps set up, and we'll start looking at those. And so I think let's go ahead and go to the screens right now. And so this first map that we have up here is a active fire map, and this is from U.S. Forest Service. And so if we talk about dryness and lack of moisture, then one of the things that can result from that is dry ground conditions, which result in forest fires. And so this map shows large incidents as of today. I think this was updated this morning on July 23. And you can see that there's these red and blue dots. These are the large fires. Type 1 is the red, blue is type 2. If you're interested what those distinguished marks are for the type 1, type 2, you can go to this site and other Forest Service sites and look at those. So, but I wanted to point this out is, if you click on a red dot here, in case this is the Moose Fire up in Idaho, it's a type 1, and it is at just under 24,000 acres, which has increased 14% from yesterday, so the containment on this is probably going to be 0. There was also an incident up here, I believe on the 21st, so this is Saturday, so it would be Thursday. A helicopter crashed, and both crew members perished in that incident. Okay, so there's a whole list of things on the left side over here, new large incidents, and you go to a page that says it's now over at a different site. And then you go to fire detection maps, and it's over at another site. So it says this, Firms USA Canada, and that is this site right here. So we'll just jump over here. This is new, and we're going to look at the fire map. And so come down here to this link for fire map. And the fire map for the U.S. shows up on this, and this is essentially North America, and all these symbols are large fires, active fires greater than 1,000 acres. So see over here on the right hand side of the screen, and you can zoom in on this and get more details. But the large fire symbols, the large fires, the smaller little red dots are other fires smaller than 1,000 acres. So in my neck of the woods in South Dakota, here south of the Black Hills, we don't have many fires. There's one down here called the Casino Fire, and if you click on that, it comes up with the size. So it's under 13,000 acres, almost 20 square miles. It's 79% contained. It's a type 3. Okay, and so there's other things. You can view the situation report and view other things. And so as these types of things become important or critical in certain areas, we'll take a look at this again each week just to see what the changes are in the fire status week to week. Okay, one of the things I want to get into before we start looking at the cropping things is I think it's important to kind of understand what the surface of the continental United States looks like. And so on this viewer, this is from the Multi-Resolution Land Characteristics Consortium, or the MRLC, and it is an interactive map of the contiguous United States with a list of products you can see over here on the left side of the screen. And so we're just going to look at a few of these, the impervious surface conditions, and again, this only goes back to 2019. So impervious surface means parts of the land that if it rains or if there's water, the water is not going to infiltrate into the ground. And so all these red or pink, whatever color they show up, dots that you're seeing here are impervious areas. And what they are primarily is cities. So large areas, concreted over. So come down in here to Phoenix. And of course, this is in a desert area, but all of these are roads and homes and buildings and things that block water. So that's what impervious surface refers to. And so in general, the percentage, I don't know what the percentage is going to be low for the U.S. The amount of trees that cover the U.S., this tree canopy, again, data are not up to date on all these products. This is 2016. And you can see that pretty much the entire eastern seaboard, all up and down Appalachia, the Michigan and Wisconsin, Minnesota, upper areas to the north are covered with trees, into the Ozarks and things down in the south. And then in the west, all of the mountain ranges, including the Black Hills, you can see here is green. So I'll turn that off again. You can see the color change. These are our tree canopy. And so typically, if it's under forest, it's not going to be a cropping situation. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on, is where the crops are versus things that are not able to host a crop. So there is a index referred to as land cover. And so in 2019, the United States land cover looked like this. And all of these colors on here are referring to a certain type of land cover. So this dark green here are the pine forests, and that goes through the west. And then this kind of a tan color in here are row crops, or crop fields, and then around the Black Hills area, you see that it's kind of a light, almost a whitish color. Those are grasslands. And so, of course, we have the national grasslands that surround the Black Hills and down into the Nebraska Sandhills. And so there's quite a lot of, all of the land area has been allocated to some type of a land cover. And this includes crops and areas that are not cropped. Okay, so one of the things that's important for vegetative growth is the amount of water that is produced or brought to the land surface to come in contact with vegetation, and then how that interacts with the ground. Is that water able to soak in and give nourishment and water to the plants, or are the temperatures such that it will evaporate with very little of it getting into the plant? And that is tracked by the ET, or evapotranspiration. So evaporation is direct evaporation into the atmosphere. Transpiration is water that goes through the plant and then transpires and evaporates off of the leaf surfaces and those types of things. We're just going to look at the seasonal, and this is going to be one that we will look at as well from day-to-day status or week-to-week status. So this is April through July of this year. And the colors in here are a value called ETAnomaly in percent. So evapotranspiration anomaly. So evapotranspiration is the amount of actual evapotranspiration that occurs, and it is that value is divided. So the ET actual is divided by the median value of the ET actual, and then that gives a percent, and so this is a percentage value. So values less than 70 are considered below average, and those are dry areas. And as we see in a minute, most of these kind of brown tones that you see on here are going to correlate with areas that are under extreme and severe drought conditions right now. In the 70 to roughly 130, in these colors right in here, are average values, and then above average are in these green tones. And so there are areas where actually, in the middle of the drought, there's areas that are wet or wetter, if you will. Okay, so drought conditions are monitored then because, again, drought conditions are essentially a measure of moisture. If we're in a drought, then we have low moisture conditions. And so these products come out weekly. This one is July 21, which was Thursday. I think these come out on a Thursday. So I will try to correlate this show with the release of these products. And these colors on here are simply looking at the drought conditions where the yellow, so I'm seeing I'm pointing, it's changing, I won't point. The yellow colors are abnormally dry, and then the next shade beyond it is moderate drought, and then severe drought, and then the first red color is extreme drought, and kind of the deep red that's inside of the lighter red rings is exceptional drought. And so you can see that a large area of Texas, swath up through Kansas into Nebraska, and then all through southern Utah, Nevada, California, up into Oregon are in extreme drought conditions. Okay, so that's a look at the current map, but we can also look at comparing multiple weeks. And so down here, July 19, this is the product that was just released, and here's what it looked like last week. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. The best way to look at this is through a comparison slider. And so we have here the same thing, July 19, that was just a couple days ago, and then the week prior, July 12. And so as we go through this, everything to the left of this blue bar now is a week ago. And as I move this slider through, it'll change to the latest current conditions. And so when we get into this area here, we'll start seeing some changes. So right here in southern Missouri, you can see that it's tan, and that area was in severe drought a week ago, and then this previous week that has gone into extreme drought. And so as we continue to move through here, you'll see some of these red areas will shrink and some will grow. So again, here's another connection from southern Kansas into this very eastern part or southwestern part of Nebraska were extreme drought, and as the week went by, they were connected together with extreme drought, so that extreme drought area has grown. So again, does not look like there's any relief currently in drought. This area of central and western U.S. is still quite droughty, and we'll continue to follow that through. So there's a lot of other ways that you can look at these data in time series and tables and graphs and whatnot. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time. We're going to basically just use this comparison slider to look at various situations. And so let's go back a year. And so let's go back to somewhere in late July of 2021. So here is July 20. Okay, so that's pretty good comparison. So now we're comparing to a year ago. So basically third week in July 21 to third week in July 22. And the image that we're seeing here is all of what it is now. And if we pull this bar through on the left side, it is going to revert back to what it was a year ago. And so was the western U.S. more droughty or less droughty in the summer of 21? Well, let's check it out. And if you're seeing the pattern, it is more droughty. Further to the north, swinging through, so much more. And then look at Texas. Last year, they were normal. So drought conditions come and go pretty quick. So last year, most of the country was in normal conditions. The West was in an extreme drought. And so, a large change in the past year, even though we have large areas that are still dry and droughty. So this is looking at the drought conditions, and one of the ways that's tracked is with what's called the Palmer Drought Severity Index. And this value can be measured back for, let's see how far it goes, 1900 to 1900. So I've set this up, and I'll start this file. This is looking at the Dust Bowl days back in the 30s. So I started in March of 31, went through to the end of 1938, and the kind of dark purple colors on here are the most severe drought, and the red. So the red and the purple are the really damaging areas. Look at down to Florida. Eastern seaboard was really, really dry and droughty, and this we're up to March of 32 right now. But one of the things you'll see as we move forward, particularly getting into 1934 area, is this area up here in South Dakota, Nebraska, was extreme droughty, and I'll help move this through a little quicker. And so now we're into July of 33, and the Midwest is starting to dry up. So here's where all the dust was generated. So completely different looking map than, let's look at this frame right back here again. This is January of 34, eastern seaboard to almost the Pacific in drought conditions. And then June 34, July 34, extreme drought across a majority of the U.S., just the eastern seaboard. The Appalachia region was not affected. Okay, so, historically, then, we need to keep sight of what's happening today with what's happened in the past, and this is one of the ways that we can do that. And that leads us up to looking at the vegetation condition. Okay, so vegetation, then, is monitored through satellite data. And I may do a separate video at some point in the future looking at actually downloading satellite imagery data, processing that data to produce these types of products, if you're interested in that type of thing. But we use an index. It's referred to as the NDVI, which is the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, and it is simply an index of how, it's a greenness index. It looks at how green the crops are. And so it is based on the fact that the plant leaves have pigments in them that absorb the visible or red light spectrum. And so as plants are growing, they will be reflecting and or absorbing near infrared, which we cannot see with our eye, but the satellites can. And so by looking at the amount of near infrared versus red light waves that the plants are interacting with, we can get a measure of how what the growth state essentially of that plant material is. So the values range from +1 to -1. So it's a narrow range, only a change of 2. So barren rock, sand, or snow are going to have low values of 0.1 and less. Shrubs and grasslands, typically what we would consider sparse vegetation, kind of like what you'd see driving through western South Dakota, is going to have an NDVI value of roughly 0.2 to 0.5. And then forest, tropical forest canopies, and crops at growth peak rates are going to have values of 0.6 up to 0.9. And so those are values that are calculated from the raw data that comes from the satellites. Okay, so this map then is looking at NDVI, and this is for 7/20. So this was, let's see, Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday. So last Wednesday, and the colors over here, here's the NDVI values. So again, if we go back and what I just said, we can kind of describe some rock versus no rock types of things. So 0.1 or less. So we're down here in these red, kind of these red values or these orange values. So down in the southwest U.S., a lot of these are desert environments, right? Sand and bare rock. So low NDVI. And then sparse vegetation, 0.2 to 0.5. So now we're looking at this salmon pink up to the really light greens, including the yellows. So all of this yellow, all through the area where we are here in western South Dakota, and you can see it's kind of everything west of the Missouri River has these kind of shrubs and grasslands types of NDVI values. And then all the other areas are areas that are cropped. So forest again in the west, forest in the east, and then croplands in the central part of Iowa and Missouri and Illinois, and this is probably growing crop in here, so very deep green, so greater than 0.9. Okay, so this is the current status of plant growth in the U.S. And again, we can compare that to different weeks. So here's a week previous, 7/21. I can turn that on, and you can see things subtly change. So look at northern Illinois and Iowa a week ago versus what it is now. It becomes much, much darker green. So we're going to be looking at that as well as we continue on through this series. And so hopefully this will be something new to you and of interest to you. And once again, as we get into these products and we understand how they work, I'll be able to just bring these up. We'll look at changes from a week-to-week status, talk about drought conditions, talk about crop growth conditions, talk about harvest, because as this last product here, this NDVI map will give us a good picture of the amount of crops that are being harvested and what the status of the harvest is. Again, all extremely important to our food supply, and so we're going to track that through. Okay, so leave a comment down below. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. If you have friends of yours that are interested in the ag industry, send them this link, share this link with them. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. See you next week.